All right, we're here today, Petersen Museum. There's no one here, so I probably don't need to wear this mask. A couple days ago, a friend of mine at the Petersen reached out and said, listen, the museum's closed. If you want to head over there, there's just a few security guards. We'll let you in. You can walk the museum all day. Yeah, I was definitely going to take an opportunity to nerd the hell out on all 3 floors of what they've got here, plus the vault. Going to be filming by myself, so it's going to be a long, interesting day. Bear with me. So yeah, welcome to the multi-part series of Scotto's night in the museum during the day. This is already awesome. I just walked in. Museum is definitely closed. Oh man. Woo! It's gonna be a fun day. Where do we start? Where do we start? What we're looking at here is the Faraday FF0. It's kind of wild, and it's weird because it's definitely a concept car, and it has a lot of big claims like 1,000 horsepower. It's got 4 motors, right? So there's a motor at each wheel. Oh yeah, it's electric. This thing is kind of wild. It's totally supposed to be a track day car, right? So this is sort of along the lines of like a Ferrari FXX. Like you don't even own it. They just let you drive it occasionally. It's got this fin on the back is actually an LED screen. So it could kind of, if you're racing, it could put up like kind of your position number or your name. It is a single person seat. And by the way, my next door neighbor actually works for Faraday. From what I heard about this seat, it's like an anti-gravity seat, right? It's developed by NASA or something like that. Like if you notice, your butt's actually below the pedals. It's a little bit more like what you would have on like a Formula One car. You know, it's supposed to be really comfortable, but also put the driver in a position that's really kind of built around driving. It's really cockpit oriented. One of the things I read about the car is that you need to wear a helmet while you drive so it can give you both oxygen and water.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
I don't really fully grasp that. Saying that it's so fast you need oxygen. It does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. So that's quick, but it's not as quick as a Veyron. It's not as quick as Ken Block's rally car, the Hoonigan, a bunch of other things, but it's certainly quick. A cool concept. It'll be questionable if it ever really kind of comes to reality. The whole concept of this car is it's built on like this platform that they're going to use for multiple different cars. It's like a sharing platform, modular battery packs, all of that stuff. They haven't released a ton of information about the technology. So in a way, even though it is a vehicle that I can tap right now and it actually exists, it still is very much vaporware, right? So I don't think they've actually done any real road testing or track testing with it to back any of the numbers. It's all kind of speculation on what they want to build, but it's cool. It's a cool kind of design study on what a race car like this could be. I mean, one of my favorite things about it is definitely, you know, how the cockpit opens, right? It has a very kind of, you know, jet feel to it, right? It's probably not easy to get in and out of, but you know, it's sort of the same concept of most race cars. You gotta just kind of jump in. It's very like driver oriented. It's very much about driver safety. One of the cool things, and it's gonna be hard to see this here in the dark, but you can actually see light through here because these little arrow tunnels go all the way through the car. And the concept is that it helps not only cool the batteries and the motors, but from an aerodynamic position, it helps with like top speed and just general aero. I love that right up in front. I mean, they're just claiming it. Quad core motors, 1,000 horsepower. I like it. It's got some Hoosiers on it. I don't know why, just cars with Hoosiers just seem cool. It's got center locks. It's got a hell of a lot of carbon. I think the whole body's actually carbon. Oh yeah, this little thing here, so you'll notice there's kind of this thing that goes over the back of the driver's head. That's actually a built-in kind of halo system, right? So between the halo on the seat and the top piece, it's all meant to kind of protect your neck. You best protect your neck. You'll notice there's actually straps that look like a Hans device built into the seat. These are all the parts that, you know, they have really tried to kind of focus on about making a really safe race car that's very driver oriented. And you know, you gotta say, it looks really driver oriented. I think from what I remember reading, your cell phone or something plugs into kind of the center of the phone, and that's like all your displays and all the metrics on the car, biometrics on you, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting that they have a piece of plexi that separates the gas pedal and the brake pedal. I guess maybe they're like assuming that you just will always left foot brake, which I mean, you know, there's no clutch, so I guess that makes sense, but it's like driving a go-kart. Also, I might be a little biased, but satin white with a little bit of pearlescent, always a good choice on a car. Yeah, the diffuser's like literally sitting on the floor. The back also reminds you that this thing has 1,000 horsepower. Canty suspension setup. I'm imagining there's like a backup camera or something in there. You know, it's a smart car. Whether or not this thing is a reality or it's vaporware, whatever it might be, this is cool. Like, this is something that excites me about the future of electric cars, right? Because there's a lot of other things here that will remain in the dark because they're about transportation. They're not about fun. They're about getting people from point to point, and that's okay because cars are needed for mobility. I have a smart EV that I use to get places. But this is about getting places really fast, and I think that that's what we all enjoy. So this is something that I hope it happens. I hope it becomes a reality. But right now, it's a really cool idea. So here it is, the Faraday FF0.
The following is a paid partnership with Keeps. And you know what? You should be glad that they're paying us, because there's a very scary fact here that we need to bring to light. And that's 2 out of 3 men, by the time they hit 35, are gonna experience some sort of male pattern baldness. And the only way to do something about that is to do something about it while you still have hair left. Now look, you don't have to go broke to avoid going bald. You see, Keeps, they've revolutionized the way that men are treated for hair loss. They make it easy to deliver your medication every 3 months, so you can say goodbye to those pharmacy checkout lines and, well, let's face it, awkward doctor visits. Keeps treatments can take up to 4 to 6 months to start seeing results, so it's important to act fast. Follow the link below to learn more and get 50% off your first order.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
This right here is a really interesting one. Literally the Getaway Car. And a car that was designed in Compton. That's right, the Corwin Getaway, straight out of Compton. And if you were to guess real quickly what year you think this was built in, just say it out loud, because it's probably not 1969. And that's what makes this car so cool, is that this was built in a time when cars didn't really look like this yet, right? I mean, this has a real kind of 1980s, early 80s vibe. I mean, there's a little bit of Fiero here. It is mid-engine, rear-wheel drive. It's actually powered by a Subaru power plant, something small like out of the Subaru 360. And it's really small. You can't tell, but this is only 11 feet long. It's a micro car. It has just this like really kind of unique look and shape. And the history behind it is actually more interesting than the way the car looks. So the idea behind the car was kind of build some economic relief for Compton after the Watts riot. Devastated the area of Watts, South Central, Compton. Oddly, a guy by the name of Cliff Hall, who was sort of a tinkerer and a, you know, kind of an engineer by hobby, was also the official photographer for Muhammad Ali.
Rolls back from those punches.
Like, you know, sting like a bee, that dude. You know, he had a lot of kind of influence because he had people like Muhammad Ali kind of behind him. He also got people like Marvin Gaye and Sidney Poitier to help kind of support this. And that ended up getting some financing by a guy named Louis Corwin, which is why the car is called the Corwin Getaway. Corwin lended his name to it, lended some dollars to it, but unfortunately Ann probably didn't lend enough dollars to it that they actually ever went into production. So this is really just a prototype, and this car sat in a horrible state of disrepair for years until the Petersen raised a bunch of money to rebuild it. And I think this is just really rad because like these are the things that are so forgotten in automotive, is cars that never got made, but people should get credit for, you know, the design behind it. I mean, this thing is super small, but has just kind of like this cool vibe to it. It only had 78 horsepower and it claimed 150 mile per hour top speed. I don't really know how that works unless like you're riding a motorcycle. There was only one of them built and this is it. I mean, seriously, the Getaway Car, like, can you think of a more gangster name? Ooh, right here is the last 911 RSR that was rear engine. That's like for a whole other conversation we got on mid-engine, right? Random top fuel. There's so much cool stuff here. So one of the biggest problems, and I will admit, is that I don't know what to talk about and what not to talk about. There's things that I'm walking around and I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. Like, how much time do you want me to spend talking about the Crossfire clay model? Probably not any time at all, so I'm gonna keep moving. Our buddy Rywire's Civic, this thing, super rad. Yeah, there's just so much stuff. I mean, this right here, this is Saddam Hussein's limo, and that's the Pope Mobile. But the Saddam Hussein limo is way cooler. So yeah, sorry, we're not gonna talk about the Pope Mobile. We're gonna talk about this for a quick second. I don't know much of the backstory on this, so I'm only gonna tell you what I see. And what I see is something awesome. I'm assuming that people stand here holding machine guns. I wanna believe that. This air vent, I don't even know where that would go, why you need air in the back. Maybe it's because you kidnap people and you keep their bodies in the back, but you still want them to breathe, because you know, you're not that bad of a dictator. I'm not sure. These handles, I'm assuming, like this where you like hold and you stand on the back, this thing is hard as hell. What it needs to be though is like slammed on air on like an 18-inch monoblock dumped. That would just kind of finish the whole thing off. But yeah, this is Saddam Hussein's personal limo. Pretty gross inside. You know, I hate to diss the Pope, but this thing's kind of weak. Look at that chair. I swear my parents had that in their living room in like the 90s. This is not appropriate for a car. Seriously, this is like the least cool Cadillac. I mean, it's not a good year. It's like the North Star engine. It's got a bunch of problems already. Oh man, I just thought the Pope would have better taste. What Pope would this be? Is this like John Paul II in this era? I forget. And to think I went to Catholic school. Anyway, apparently this was never actually used. Apparently they built this car. The Pope never used it. My guess is because he saw it and was like, seriously, that's gross. Can't catch me dead in that thing. Hook me up with something that looks way more fresh than that. The bishops have cool hats. I should at least have a really cool Pope Mobile. And then after that, they built the Pope Mobile with the bubble and he got his wish. That's the story I think exists. I'm not really sure, but like I said, I went to Catholic school, so I know these things. Let's look at this beauty. First off, a little bit of background. My dad had a Jaguar E-Type. He sold that E-Type before I was born, and I think he might hold me responsible for why he had to sell that E-Type. Now having a child, I understand that. So he always talked about the E-Type and always just talked about Jaguars. This right here is the E-Type. But if it wasn't for the D-Type, which was a pretty amazing race car that Jaguar built and ran and competed in 1954, there wouldn't have been the E-Type. And this is basically a street-going version of what the D-Type was. All right, so this is probably my favorite car in the museum. And not because it belongs to Steve McQueen, because that's what most people talk about. It's definitely cool that Steve McQueen drove this. And not only did he drive this, but I think the legend is that he got pulled over doing like 120 miles an hour on Holland. But that's not the reason I love this car. Because this car, known as the XK Super Sport or just the XK SS, was basically leftovers from the Jaguar race program, right? So Jaguar was racing the D-Type in the 1950s. 1954, great year for them. They bring out the D-Type, does great. But you know, some years pass and all of a sudden they're on to kind of the next program of what they're racing. And they had a bunch of D-Type shells left around, so they decided, you know what? Let's make some street cars out of it. And this is what you have to love about that era of racing, is that people thought to themselves, you know what we should do with the race cars that we're not going to use for racing right now? We should just sell them to people to drive on the street. So this is essentially a race car. And they just added things like, you know, some bumperettes and some turn signals and windscreen and side glass and a luggage rack and a top to make it a more presentable or more respectable, you should say, street car, right? You know, and they also added this extremely obnoxious side exit exhaust. It's perfect. It feels like it doesn't belong on that car. And that's what makes it great. It's powered by an inline six. That's the motor that Jaguar is known for. Yeah, sure, they put the V12 in the E-Type, but really that inline six, I mean, they've used that motor forever. I mean, it's basically ran from like the early 50s all the way through to like the 2000s or something, right? But this one made 250 horsepower in 1956 when this car was available. That was a lot of power, and it would actually propel this thing to 180 miles an hour. Yo, think about that, 180 miles an hour. And this, 180 miles an hour on the Mulsanne Straight in Le Mans, sounds scary as hell. And this, Steve McQueen called it the Green Rat, which is kind of a fitting name. And he actually painted this thing green, which I don't mind. I don't mind the green paint, but it's like really British and like maybe not in the best of ways. But it seems really fitting on a Jaguar, doesn't it? But the original color, which is kind of how I wish it still was white with red interior. Maybe I have a slight bias. There's things too I really love about it, like these louvers are asymmetric. That's something that only would happen in a race car. You wanna roll the window down? Guess what? You can't. You can't roll the window down. No, you have to take out a flathead screwdriver and undo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to remove the side glass. And I absolutely love that because I'm a masochist and I like cars that are difficult to own and drive, apparently. I mean, would you look at it? For some of you, I totally get it that this just doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate because it's old and it doesn't connect. You'd rather me talk about the RX-7, and I get that because that car is really cool, but that car might not have ever. And there was only 16 of them made, right? So they initially decided they were gonna make 25. They had 25 leftover race, which makes it probably worth, but unfortunately the Jaguar factory burned down after they built 16. Ever get to drive. I just love that rawness. Okay, I've probably talked way too long about this car. Let's talk about something else now, all right? But one last thing. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously. And the Ford GT. I mean, seriously, so much has been said about these cars that I don't know what else I can say, other than I drove this car. I drove this car in 2005, so then when this car came out, I had been a journalist for about a year, right? About a year and a half. I was kind of on the press tour at the time, and it was in New York City, in the press fleet. And at the time, the PR guy said, hey, I can only let you drive it for about an hour and a half. You can meet me Sunday morning and take the keys to the car, and it's gotta be a chaperone trip. I gotta have to drive with you. So at this point, I hadn't really driven that many like cars like this, right? I mean, at the time, the car was probably, I think the car sold for like $180,000. Now they're worth about $350,000. It was clear at the time they were gonna be worth a lot because they limited how many they made. So anyway, Sunday morning comes around. I could barely sleep. I'm so excited to go drive this car. The one I drove was the red and white, which I personally think is the only way to own the 2005 Ford GT. Let's just put this in a frame, right? So it's 2004. I am 24, 25 at the time, right? It's me and my buddy Jason Slack. We're on the FDR Drive and we're sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. So if you don't live in New York City, the FDR Drive flanks the east side of Manhattan and heads up from the bottom all the way to the top. And we're just sitting in bumper to bumper traffic, and like we're letting traffic go around 4, 5, 6 cars, letting it kind of like, you know, bleed out in front of us. And I would just romp it. And like we probably weren't even speeding, right? We were just kind of getting it up to, you know, just being a total racer. And I kept doing that, kept doing it. And all of a sudden I see cherries behind me. And I'm like, ah, man, like I've been driving the car for all of an hour and I'm already getting pulled over. The cop pulls up next to me and is like, I cannot believe you're driving a Ford GT. He's like, how the hell do you have that? And I was like, oh, I write for a magazine, so they gave me this car, blah, blah, blah. He's like, dude, that thing is so cool. He's like, let me shut down the road for you. Hold on 1 second. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, I need to see this thing rip. And he turns on the lights and he shuts down the FDR Drive and he lets, you know, about a half mile go out in front of me. And he's like, come on, let's see it, let's see it. And I got to just, the first time I ever opened this thing up was under a police closure on the FDR Drive in Manhattan and just ripped first and second gear. And it was just like, like mind-numbingly fast. And I'm really happy that I didn't pull a Mustang maneuver and just crash it into, you know, into the K-rail. I had never driven anything this fast with this much power. You know, you're looking at a car that had 550 horsepower, I want to say, and you know, it was supercharged V8. But the thing that mattered most was it had no traction control, right? It was a really, for lack of say, like a better word, it was a very visceral car. I mean, I don't want to use raw because I would use raw to explain a lot of other stuff here, but it was an attempt to try to recreate that feeling that the GT40 had, and they didn't want to have a lot of technology in it. They wanted something that had this supercharger screaming behind your ear, which is something that you're very aware of when you're driving the car. Like you look in the rear view and what you see is the pulley spinning. This car truly scared me. And I don't know why that is, but I love cars that scare me. Now let's talk about this car. Honestly, this is one of those cars where I commend Ford for what they've built. They built a car, they took it to Le Mans, they won, and they actually made a documentary about this car. I probably would buy it over a Ferrari. It looks so amazing from like certain sides, like this. Just looks great. There's a lot of like DNA that carries over, but I don't think it should be called a Ford GT. I don't know why it just loses something that this car had. I love this car. I just don't know if I love it as a Ford GT. The headlights look like they were printed in a 3D printer. They're just wild looking. The dash is carbon. The seats and all the instruments inside are crazy. But it's a paddle shifter. It doesn't have a manual box like this thing does, and the manual box in this thing felt so good. One of the things about this car I remember hating is the A-pillar. The A-pillar is so wide you can't see through it. But you know, it's got a traditional like handbrake where this car's got like a button that does that. And I know that this car's probably faster. I probably could drive this car better than I could drive this car, but I don't know if this car would scare me in the same way. Maybe it would just because it's worth so much. It doesn't evoke that feeling that the original Ford GT gave. The original Ford GT is still one of the most amazing cars, right? Like, I think we all agree with that. I think that that's just one of those things where like, you know, this car was one of the best kind of reimaginations of an old car that I had really seen. Like, I really think they nailed it. And maybe I wouldn't feel that way if I grew up in the 60s around the GTs and I would think that this thing was, you know, a molestation of the concept. But this is where I just go off about car. I don't dislike this car. Like, let's get that really straight. It's not that I dislike it. It's just that it just doesn't seem like it's a GT. They should have called it something else. I just don't know what. That being said, I haven't driven it. So Vaughn, if you want to let me drive yours, maybe I'll change my mind. Oh man, it's been a crazy day. I've now been here for, I don't even remember how many hours. Just kind of continuing to walk it. I mean, the vault took way more time than I even expected. There's just a bunch of cool stuff here. There's a bunch of TV cars here, and then just a bunch of other cars up here that we're kind of picking into, like this thing right here. Again, another road-going race car. Such a theme for the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Take race cars and turn them into road cars instead of the other way around. And the lights are out. I'm not controlling that. I don't know who is. But yeah, this thing, Mark III GT40, the original and iconic car that kind of just, you know, really set Ford apart. Hands down, one of my favorite 90s supercars. It's definitely a car you don't see often. I had a chance to drive in one, never driven one, but it's just, it's crazy what this car was capable of at the time. I mean, we've gotten so used to 200 mile an hour plus supercars and hypercars. It's like the standard now. Shit, there's a lot of cars that aren't even considered supercars that can do 200 miles an hour, but at the time, this thing did 210 miles an hour, and it was mind-blowing. because it was the early 90s. And for me, I think this car changed the way performance car enthusiasts thought about Bugatti, because let's be honest, before that, Bugatti was more of this like luxury car that was more in line with Rolls-Royce. Yeah, they did racing back in the day. I'm not gonna take that away from them. But, you know, it just wasn't like the kind of car you would put as a poster on the wall of your room when you were a teenager. This was 100% poster-worthy car in any teenage boy's room in the 90s, and arguably maybe middle-aged men like myself today. Some things I love about it though, because like Bertone designed, obviously has an amazing lines to it, but then there's some things like the mirrors just seem so out of place to me. Like they're just huge and they stick up. They kind of actually look like motorcycle mirrors from the 90s. Just these big plastic globs. Like all the different vents on this thing, you know, whether it's one of these, you can see there's tow hook up front. You've got these vents. You've got this vent. You've got the tow hook vent, which I really think is more of a design thing. You've got this one, which is a relief for the other ones. And then you've got these side ones, and you've got these NACA ducts. You've got these other vents here that help the engine compartment breathe. It's just vents on vents on vents on vents. One of those things on a supercar, like I think more vents the better, right? Like more scoops, vents show that you need to take a lot of air into the car. Even the whole back of the car, if I recall, is all vents too, right? So you've got vents, 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 vents. It's just gonna need a little moment for myself right now. This isn't any 308. This is actually Tom Selleck's 308 from Magnum PI. If you don't know Magnum PI, I'm dating myself, but if you do, it's where cool mustaches, everything about cool, strong, sexy men come from. It's basically the DNA of the man your dad wishes he could be. Anyway, I read about this, and I read that this vehicle was built so that Tom Selleck could fit in it. Tom Selleck was 6'4". So I said to my friends at Petersen, I wanna see if I actually fit in here, because I don't fit in most Ferraris. So do you guys mind if I get in? And they said, yeah, no, that's totally cool. By the way, door handle position on this thing, super cool. Let's see how this works out. Oh yeah, just get those little legs in here. Oh yeah, I mean, I guess, I could certainly drive it. I can hit the clutch. I mean, if I really slouch down, maybe. But it looks like I was probably a lot bigger than Tom Selleck. I mean, seriously, like, if you don't know who Magnum PI is, your mom does. I'm just saying. Like, she knows who Magnum PI is. I don't know if I'm really a Ferrari guy. I gotta say, I like these things. And I've driven 360s and 458s and things like that. I definitely don't fit well in here. It does have a Benzie box, which is cool though. A Benzie box, for those of you who don't know, is a stereo that pulls out like this. I guess my dreams of driving a 308 are completely crushed. Luckily, I'm a Porsche guy. It is nice in here, and I'm kind of tired, so I just take a little nap. Think about growing a mustache. I'm starting to get delirious. This is that weird point in when you're spending the whole day by yourself, not talking to other people, and you're just talking out loud to a camera. I still have the whole rest of the museum to do. This is way more work than I thought it was going to be. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But the one nice thing about being in a museum by yourself is that there's no pressure to like move along. And then I'm also just trying to enjoy myself, right? Like I'm here to make content for you guys to watch, but I'm also here to take advantage of this incredible opportunity. I'm sure to you guys, you're watching this and it's like a 25-minute video and you're thinking to yourself, like, you just took 25 minutes to walk through there. No, it takes hours because you gotta like move cameras and then you gotta set them up, and then you realize that you forgot to turn on your audio and you didn't record any audio, and it's just you like miming things. Second, just double checking that we were recording there. I thought we might not have been. That's kind of how my day's been going. A lot has happened, and at the same time, nothing has happened. Anyway, I guess I should move on. I think we're done with the vault, so I think I'm gonna move on to the next section, which for you might be a whole other video. Yo, let's be real honest. If this car existed today, or if the guy who designed this car existed today, the Ruxton, this would be a dunk. Although look at this thing. Guess you weren't expecting to see front wheel drive up in there. That colorway, man. Woo, look at that. I'm just looking in the back to see if there's any drivetrain back here. A front wheel drive Ruxton. A car I never knew I cared about until right now.